The girl's face went pale. "That's them," she cried. Without thinking, Liam grabbed the bag and stumbled toward the front. The kids were frozen, unsure whether to run or hide. The men pounded on the bus doors, shouting, "Open up. We're with security." But something about them felt wrong. No badges, no uniforms, just cold, sharp eyes. The driver hesitated, his hand hovering over the door switch. Outside, one of the men reached into his jacket. And that's when everything spiraled out of control. The bus was dead silent, except for the frantic pounding on the doors. The driver's hand hovered over the switch, his face drenched in sweat. The kids stared, wide-eyed, their fear growing with every second. The poor girl shook her head violently. "Don't open it. They're not here to help." But the driver was panicking, his instincts telling him to trust anyone claiming to be from security. Just as his finger brushed the button, Liam shouted, "Wait." He held up the suspicious backpack, his face pale. "There's a bomb on the bus. They're here to make sure it goes off." The driver froze. The weight of Liam's words sank in, and for a brief moment, everything felt suspended in time. Then, one of the men outside pulled something from his jacket, a small black device with a blinking red light. "They're going to trigger it," the poor girl screamed. The driver snapped out of his daze, slamming the bus into gear and flooring the accelerator. The bus rolled forward, tires screeching, throwing everyone off balance. The men outside stumbled, caught off guard, but quickly jumped back into their car, racing after the bus. Inside, chaos erupted again. Kids were crying, clinging to seats, while Liam held the bag tightly, trying not to jostle it. The poor girl climbed next to him, her hands shaking as she examined the wires. I think I can stop it," she whispered. Liam's eyes widened. "How do you know that?" "I don't," she admitted, "but if we don't try, we're all in danger." The black car pulled up alongside the bus, its window rolling down. One of the men aimed something small and metallic, aimed right at the bus. And then, bang. The sound echoed through the air as the bus swerved violently. Screams filled the space. But what happened next? No one could have predicted. The loud bang echoed like a gunshot, but it wasn't what anyone expected. The bus lurched sharply to the side, the front tire blown out. The driver fought the wheel, trying to keep control as the bus screeched along the road, sparks flying where the metal rims scraped the pavement. Kids screamed, bracing themselves against the seats. The black car didn't slow down. It pulled alongside the crippled bus, the man in the passenger seat holding a small device, the trigger. His finger hovered over the button, his expression cold and determined. Inside the bus, Liam gripped the bag tightly, his heart pounding. "They're going to blow it up," he shouted. The poor girl's hands trembled as she leaned over the bomb, her eyes darting across the tangled mess of wires. "I don't know which one to cut," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the chaos. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse, a second car appeared in the distance, speeding toward them from the opposite direction. For a moment, hope flickered. Maybe it was the police. But as it got closer, it became clear it wasn't. It was another black car, identical to the first, and it was heading straight for the bus. "They're trying to trap us," Liam realized. The bus driver slammed the brakes, causing the kids to lurch forward. The bus skidded sideways, coming to a shaky stop between the two cars. The men jumped out, surrounding the bus. There was no escape. But then the poor girl's eyes lit up with realization. She pointed at the bomb. "Wait, I know this isn't just a bomb. It's a tracker. They're following this asterisk." Liam's mind raced. "So if we get rid of it..." Before he could finish, the bus door was yanked open. And what happened next changed everything. The bus door flew open with a violent hiss, and one of the men stormed in, his face hard and determined. He held the trigger device tightly, his finger hovering over the button. The kids froze, too scared to scream. The poor girl instinctively stepped in front of Liam, shielding him and the bomb. "Give me the bag," the man growled, his eyes dark and unblinking. Liam's heart raced. He could feel the heat of fear in his chest, but something inside him snapped. "Why?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "If you're going to blow it up anyway, why do you need it?" The man hesitated for a split second, and that's when the poor girl realized the truth. "You don't want to destroy the bus," she whispered. "You need the bomb intact. It's not just a bomb, it's evidence." The man's face twitched with frustration. "You don't know what you're talking about." The bikers froze, their bravado fading as they processed Mason's words. Seal. The realization hit them hard, but it wasn't just that. Mason's arrival wasn't random. It couldn't be. Jack knew men like him didn't show up by coincidence. Jack's grip on Rick loosened slightly, not out of hesitation, but recalibration. This wasn't just about a gang of bullies anymore. The stakes had just been raised. Mason wasn't here to stop the fight. He was here for something else, something bigger. His presence turned the diner from a battleground of egos into something far more dangerous. Mason's eyes flicked to Jack's mother, a knowing glance that wasn't lost on Jack. This wasn't an accident. Mason was here with a purpose, and whatever it was, it went deeper than an afternoon at a diner. Jack straightened, letting Rick stumble back, gasping for breath. But his attention was now locked on Mason. The real fight hadn't even started yet. The diner felt like it was holding its breath, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Jack's eyes locked onto Mason, every instinct on high alert. This wasn't about the bikers anymore. They were just noise, background to a much bigger problem. Mason wasn't the type to show up without a reason, and Jack could feel it in his gut. This was personal. Mason stepped forward, his smirk never fading. "Didn't think I'd find you here, Jack. But life's funny like that." His eyes flicked back to Jack's mother, then to Jack again, the unspoken threat hanging in the air. Jack knew that look. It wasn't just about the past, it was leverage. The bikers, realizing they were way out of their depth, hesitated. Rick rubbed his wrist, his earlier confidence gone, replaced with confusion and fear. "Hey man," Rick muttered to Mason, trying to salvage some authority. "You know this guy." Mason didn't even glance at him. "I know exactly who he is, and you're lucky you're still standing." Jack shifted his stance slightly, his muscles coiled, not out of fear but readiness. "What do you want, Mason?" Mason's smile faded, his face hardening. "What I've always wanted. A debt paid." Before anyone could react, Mason reached inside his jacket, but Jack was faster. In one swift motion, he closed the distance, disarming Mason with precision honed from years of training. The gun clattered to the floor, sliding under a table. The bikers scattered, realizing this was way beyond their league. They grappled briefly, fists landing with sharp, brutal efficiency. This wasn't a bar fight. It was two men with history, each move calculated, each strike personal. Jack's mother watched, her face tense, but trusting her son's skill. Finally, with a surge of strength, Jack pinned Mason to the floor, his knee pressing down, breath heavy but controlled. Mason struggled, then stilled, the fight draining from him as reality settled in. But just as Jack leaned in, ready to deliver the final warning, Mason whispered, "You think this ends with me?" A cold chill ran through Jack. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Jack stood, his gaze dark and steady. The immediate threat was gone, but Mason's words lingered. There was more to come, more beneath the surface. The real battle had only just begun. Jack stood over Mason, his chest rising and falling with steady, controlled breaths. The adrenaline was still there, humming beneath the surface, but his focus never wavered. Mason's words echoed in his mind. "You think this ends with me, a reminder that some battles don't finish with a single fight. But for now, the immediate danger was over." Jack stepped back, letting Mason slump against the floor, defeated but still wearing that smug grin, like he knew something Jack didn't. But Jack wasn't interested in playing Mason's games anymore. Without another word, he turned his back, walking over to his mother. She stood slowly, her hands steady despite everything that had happened. Their eyes met, and in that brief glance, an entire conversation passed between them, relief, pride, and unspoken gratitude. The diner, once filled with tension and fear, slowly came back to life. The other patrons who had been frozen in place started to move again, whispering among themselves. The waitress peeked from behind the counter, her wide eyes filled with awe and curiosity. Jack gave her a small nod, a silent thank you for staying calm through the chaos. Rick and his gang, now completely stripped of their false bravado, shuffled toward the door, avoiding Jack's gaze. Their mockery, their arrogance, it had all crumbled under the weight of something they couldn't understand: real strength. Not the kind that comes from intimidation, but the quiet, steady kind that doesn't need to be loud to be felt. Jack and his mother stepped outside into the fresh air, the sky painted with streaks of orange as the sun began to set. The cool breeze felt grounding, pulling him back from the edge of everything that had just happened. As they walked toward his truck, his mother finally broke the silence. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly. Jack gave a small smile, glancing at her. "I know, but I wanted to." She reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. No more words were needed. Because sometimes real strength isn't about the fight. It's about knowing who you're fighting for. The diner was unusually quiet that afternoon, the kind of stillness that makes even the clink of a coffee cup echo. A woman sat alone at a corner booth, her eyes distant, filled with a quiet sadness that only those who've known real loss carry. She was a widow, dressed modestly, her wedding ring still shining despite the years. The waitress offered a gentle smile as she refilled her coffee, sensing there was more behind her silence than met the eye. Then the door swung open with a loud creak, shattering the calm. A gang of bikers stomped in, their laughter loud and crude, leather jackets creased with dust from the road. They carried an air of arrogance, the kind of swagger that thrives on intimidation. Spotting the woman sitting alone, they saw an easy target, someone who wouldn't fight back. They surrounded her booth, tossing rude comments and mocking her grief, their voices dripping with disrespect. The other diners watched in discomfort, some too afraid to intervene, others pretending not to notice. But what none of them knew, what the bikers never even considered, was who she really was. This wasn't just any woman sitting quietly with her memories. She was the mother of a Navy SEAL, a man trained to handle situations far more dangerous than a group of loudmouths in a diner. And as fate would have it, her son was closer than they realized. Just when the mockery seemed unbearable, the door opened again. A man walked in, calm, composed, with a presence that commanded attention without a single word. No leather jacket, no flashy entrance. Just quiet strength, the kind you can't fake. His eyes met his mother's for a brief second, reading everything he needed to know without her saying a word. The bikers didn't notice him at first, but they would. Because in the next few moments, everything was about to change. The man who walked in was dressed simply: faded jeans, a plain t-shirt, and boots worn from years of hard use. But it wasn't his clothes that caught attention. It was the way he carried himself. His posture was relaxed, yet there was an unmistakable sharpness in his gaze, like a coiled spring hidden beneath calm waters. His name was Jack, though few in the diner knew that. What mattered more was who he was: a Navy SEAL, trained for situations where failure isn't an option. But today wasn't about missions or orders. This was personal. Jack's eyes flicked from his mother to the bikers, taking in every detail: their stance, their tone, the smugness in their laughter. He didn't react right away. That wasn't his style. Instead, he moved to the counter, ordered a coffee, and waited. Observing, calculating. The bikers, too caught up in their own bravado, barely noticed him. They were too busy enjoying the sound of their own voices, tossing out crude jokes, thinking they were untouchable. But beneath Jack's calm exterior, something simmered. He remembered the nights his mother sat by the window, waiting for letters when he was deployed. The strength she showed when his father passed away, holding their family together with nothing but sheer will. She was the toughest person he knew, not because she fought battles, but because she survived them. And now here she was, being disrespected by men who didn't even know the meaning of the word honor. The diner grew tense, a quiet undercurrent of discomfort spreading among the other patrons. The waitress glanced nervously at Jack, sensing something different about him. He gave her a small nod, a silent reassurance. No need for words. Not yet. Jack sipped his coffee, his mind sharp, every muscle ready without showing it. He wasn't going to rush this. Timing was everything. The bikers had no idea the storm sitting just a few feet away. They laughed a little louder, oblivious to the fact that their dominance was nothing more than an illusion, one that was about to shatter. Jack sat quietly, his fingers wrapped around the warm coffee cup,